Hi, I'm Renee Eichler from Ohio State University Extension, and today we are going to play with our food by turning this liquid into a solid. So how do we get butter? Well, we can buy it from the store like most people, or we could make our own. Now for this experiment, all you need is some heavy whipping cream that you can buy at the store, or I have here, this is some fresh milk actually from our dairy cow. Now this milk cannot be drank and has not been pasteurized, meaning that the bacteria in the milk hasn't been removed through the pasteurization process where they heat the milk to a certain temperature in order it to be considered safe to drink. And it has also not been homogenized. So that's how it's going to help us just to see this experiment be done. And the homogenation process in our milks is when the dairies go through this homogenization process and keep the milk fat from separating from the rest of the milk. It's actually where we get that saying, the cream rises to the top. Because as you can see in this jar here, there's a little bit of a slight coloration difference where it's a little thicker white up here, and that's the cream. It literally rose to the top. It's very, very simple for this experiment. I do recommend using heavy whipping cream, or you could try it with our vitamin D or whole milk. That's the one that has the red label. And all we do is we put it in a small jar like this, and we just shake it, just like this. All we're gonna do is we're gonna shake it, and it's gonna go from this liquid state into almost like a whipped cream, and then it's going to separate again, and a small ball should form. So I want to take a couple minutes. I'm going to take a little break from shaking here to explain to you what we get from our dairy foods. Now, butter is not going to be a dairy source. It is made from dairy, but we are not going to be able to count it as one of our dairy food choices because our butter, like I said, while it is made from a dairy, it is not going to be a dairy food because it's giving us fat, but it's not giving us the calcium. And the calcium is what we need from our dairy foods because we need that calcium for our bone health. If we do not get calcium, then our bones are going to get weak. You need to think of your bones like tree limbs. So if we climb a tree, or if we're playing around a tree and we pull down on a branch, if it's a healthy tree, that branch is going to go back to where it was. But if that tree is not healthy, when you pull on the branch, it could snap. And that's basically how our bones work. They have a little bit of flexibility in them that when we fall and our bones are healthy, they're going to give and more than likely not break. Not always the case, as we know. But if we are not getting those calcium-rich foods and we start developing osteoporosis, which just means brittle bones, then a simple fall could result in a fracture, and we want to avoid that. And I can prove to you by looking at the nutrition facts label. Okay, this is the important part of our food packaging. This tells us everything that is in the food as well as what nutrients it is or isn't giving us. And if we look at this label, we can see that our total fat in this product is 10 grams, okay, per serving, and a serving is a tablespoon. Okay. And below here, we see our calcium, which is at 0%, which means although this is technically a dairy, it is not one that we can count as a dairy food because of the lack of calcium. And all your dairy foods should also contain vitamin D because without the vitamin D, then the calcium is not able to be absorbed into our bones. They work together like a team. They're stronger together than apart. So let's continue with our shaking here. So we're just going to keep shaking this. This is a great activity for you guys. It could even be a little bit of a workout for your arms as you continue and continue to shake it up. Okay? And eventually, we should be getting like a whipped cream type texture and look. Okay, so I've been shaking this for about 10 minutes, and as you can see, it's still really liquid, but if we listen carefully, you can hear a little bit of a change in the way that the liquid sounds, as if there's something solid forming. So let me flip this upside down, and I'm actually going to tilt the camera down, and you should be able to see. Let me get in place of the sun here. You should be able to see there's a little bit, it almost looks curdled, but that's the milk fat congealing together, so to speak, and the rest of the milk is that liquid there. So we're slowly getting there. This is a bit of a process. As I said, it's been about 10 minutes. You can see it floating there, and we are just going to have to keep shaking this until we get that butter. That's why I said this is quite the workout, because I've had to switch arms. It's very, very tiring. But as I shake this, let me talk to you briefly about some of our healthy dairy choices. So we have, of course, milk. That's the one we commonly think of. And there's multiple different types of milk, whether it's the whole milk, 2% milk, 1% milk, or skim milk. Now at the schools, the children are getting skim milk or 1% milk options. And that is because those are the two we want to strive for as best we can, because they have the least amount of fat. Skim milk is 0% milk, meaning there is no fat, so you wouldn't be able to do this type of experiment with it. Now 1% milk has a very small percentage of fat in it compared to our whole milk. Some other options for us that give us our calcium are things like cheeses, and it doesn't matter if it's shredded cheese or block cheese. Okay, those are going to count, not cream cheese. Cream cheese is going to fall into the same category as butter. And then we have also our yogurts. So yogurts are also going to be a great source of calcium. The issue with yogurt is we have to be careful with the amount of sugar in it, because if you get a yogurt that is flavored or has the fruit at the bottom, they are going to be higher in sugar than a plain yogurt. So what we can do is still enjoy those flavored yogurts, but flavor it ourselves. Buy some fresh fruit and add it in, rather than spending the extra on those fruit at the bottom flavors. Okay, and you're going to cut down on the sugar. The same thing applies to our milk. As I continue to shake this, we're getting a little bit more of a solid form in there. And that is, while chocolate milk is good, and you're still going to get the same amount of calcium as our white milks, what you're going to see is about a doubling of the milk. So all milk contains about 11 to 12 grams of sugar, and this is our cow's milk. Whenever we have flavored milks such as chocolate, that can be up to 24 grams or more of sugar in the milk, and that is from the additional sugar. So about half of it's added sugar, and we really want to watch how much added sugar that we have a day. So again, we're just going to keep shaking this. This would be a great activity if you have multiple kids. And we are getting a nice form there. Okay, and we're just going to keep going. And eventually we can get some butter. And when you do this, you can flavor the butter however you like. You can make it a little sweeter, kind of like what we get out at some restaurants with some cinnamon in it. You can make it a little savory. You can put some garlic in it. Make it your own, friends. So we've been shaking this for a very, very long time. And actually what I did to kind of speed up the process was dumped out some of that liquid that was separating from the milk fat. So what I would recommend is when you do this at home is to start with not as big. You could actually fill it only to where I currently have it now and shake from that. But as you can see, after I've dumped some of that out, we've gotten this solid to form and separate from the liquid. So I'm going to shake this for a couple more minutes, and then we have to strain this. No matter what, you have to strain this, and you can use like a cheesecloth so that looks like just a thin piece of material. Okay, kind of reminds you of some of the decorations for Halloween, how thin it is. And people use that in obviously cheese making to strain the liquid away from the cheese curds that we form into the cheese that we eat. I have a strainer in my sink that I'm going to dump this into and then put it in a bowl for us to see. And we are pretty good here. This looks like some nice whipped butter. So let's dump this and see just what we get. Okay, so here you have it, our final product of fresh homemade butter. And you see that little bit of liquid that is remaining from our product, and goes right on the knife and will spread just like butter. Now this is, as I said, unflavored because it is just straight from the milk, or in the case when you all experiment, the heavy whipping cream. So there will be a little bit of natural sweetness from that lactose. Again, that's the sugar, the sugar produced by the cow when they are milked. But we can make this as sweet or as savory as we like. Just as always, please be cautious when you are using sugar and salt, as we don't need a lot of those in our diet. So that is it with the butter making. Stay tuned throughout the end of the video here, and we're actually going to see just where the milk came from for this experiment.
Betadine dip to kill any bacteria or germs or any dirt that is applied onto the cow's teeth. We also use it to allow the cow to naturally allow her to let her oxytocin down, and with us massaging it by wiping them down, it allows her to just calm down to allow that oxytocin to work. So after you get done wiping the teeth, because you want to make sure that the teat valve, which is located on the bottom side of the teeth, is nice and clean, so that way you don't get no bacteria or anything in your milk. This here is a milking station. This is a smaller size than what you would see at a normal dairy. This is between an 8 and 15% vacuum pump. This is the claw that's used to put onto the cow to milk each teat individually. This will draw vacuum, and it pulses. As it pulses, it actually draws the milk into the milk line and into the pail. Or in a bigger dairy, it goes from the milk line into a large pipeline and then into a larger holding tank, to where the milk is cooled down to between 39 and 36 degrees for the milk hauler to pick up. Vacuum comes on, and then you gradually put one cup on at a time. As you can see, the milk's coming down. Comes down through the claw, out of the teacup, down into the milk line, through the milk line, into the pail.
We then use the milk to feed Sarah's calf, Bella, and that's the brown jersey right here, as well as her friends that we've picked up. We have Meatloaf, Daisy, and Mohawk. Feeding time gets a little crazy, but they're going to grow up and be either beef for a family, or in Bella's case, she's going to be a future dairy cow. I'm Renee Eichler with Ohio State University Extension's Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program. Thank you for joining me.